Hello and welcome to the Varside Pubcast, coming to you all the way from the Varside Arms. And joining me today for a swift one is Rich. How you doing, mate?
All right, mate. Here for an early doors.
Yeah, I've been drinking fairly early doors anyway. When I've been in Amsterdam for a few days, nothing too illicit. Been with the family actually. We had a lovely trip. Although they did stitch me up. They
Go
got
on.
me a red velvet cake, which I wasn't sure what this was, but you could see by the giggles on their faces, and then it was turned out as a space cake. Oh, oh man, I'm telling you, I was the ground didn't stop moving. It was not a
uh,
nice experience.
brilliant. Brilliant. So you went for your birthday.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
big
yeah.
3-0 this time, then, is it?
2-0, yeah, 2-0. I had quite a few, I tell you.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant stuff. Well,
Yeah, so yeah, we had a lovely time. I literally only got back last night, and then this morning I smashed my finger in the car door, and it's about three times the size. So all going good.
well, you're going to nip up the doctors later and say, "Can you give me something for the pain?" But the wife says to leave the swelling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, dear.
Anyway,
Right.
yeah, we've
Let's.
we've veered off already, haven't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have.
Yeah.
This isn't going to end well, is it? Right. So let's have a look at the Champions League draw, shall we? And yeah, we are back in the Champions League. That draw though, how fucking boring was that?
Well, luckily I was doing. I mean, when it was all happening, I was standing on the top of of some steel beams taking a barn down, so I was able to miss the entire drawn out event. But I did see um, the Woolwich Twitter was all a bit like, "Oh look, he's there rigging the draw for Spurs again."
Yeah, yeah. There's a really funny tweet. I think it was between Billy and someone from Billy T and someone from Fighting Cock, where they were talking about that 150 million pound went on making the hot balls. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we got quite a favourable draw. We ended up with Frankfurt, who were the
Very
pot
good.
one, just simply on the basis that they won the UEFA Cup, didn't they?
Mm.
So actually, that's pretty good. They seem to be probably the weakest out of all the pot one. They've lost a few players. I think they've lost Kostic.
Mm.
So they'll probably hump us now saying that, but I fancy our chances against them.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Marseille tie is going to be an interesting going to
Yeah,
be an
yeah.
interesting pair of games, especially as they both of the games come sort of 2 or 3 days before really big Premier League fixtures as well.
Mm,
We've got Man City away immediately after the home tie against them, and then we're at home to Liverpool immediately after the away tie. So
yeah, yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what they do with the side, with those two games in mind.
I think yeah, we'll look at this later on with the congestion stuff, but it's there's going to be a lot of rotation. I would have thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've actually got some players to rotate now, which is encouraging.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and all those destinations, like Sporting sounds like a good trip. Marseille sounds like a good trip. Frankfurt. That's the thing with the Champions League, isn't it? You look at those draws and you look at those sides, and they're like holiday destinations.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If
but
only I could get tickets for any of them.
yeah, yeah. Well, and all the others like the conference and the UEFA, they all look like war zones.
Yeah, yeah, they're like work visits to a tractor factory.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I'm quite pleased with that draw. I mean, I know a lot of people going, "Oh, you got the easy draw." I don't think there really is any easy draws in the Champions League, especially as they'll all be wanting to prove themselves. And I think it's quite a nice draw.
Yeah,
Um, but that's the vagaries of the system, isn't it? They try and keep the top clubs apart because they basically want those going through to the last 16.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we'll come out of this group. I mean, something will have gone very wrong if we don't come out of this group, and then we'll probably just hit Real Madrid in the next round.
Yeah, yeah. But I'd take that. I'd rather, to be honest, I mean, maybe I don't know whether the club would, but I prefer to get out of this, and even if we went out in the quarters, would be preferable to then spending months in the UEFA Cup playing on
Yeah,
a Thursday and having that problem again.
yeah.
I'd much rather just see how far we can go in the Champions League.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the longer we're in it, the easier it is to then draw more players in the next window as well, isn't it? Because they can
Hmm.
be able to see that we're not there as a flash in the pan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, we've really got to. We need to make a statement about our return to it, don't we? We have
Oh
to look
yeah.
at this like like the second year of Poch's Champions League sort of arc, where we weren't a one-off.
Hmm.
I think that'll
Hmm.
make a massive difference to the club.
But you look at that group and you got to fancy your chances. I mean, I don't think any of those are easy sides, but I think Olympique Marseille, from what I've heard about them, they're in a bit of a kind of state of flux. They've had a lot of turnover of management.
Mm.
They've got rid of a lot of players. I think um, Sporting seem to be doing okay. Again, Frankfurt have lost a number of players as well, and I think they're a little bit in transition. So you would have to fancy our chances of getting out of it, and if we can't, then it doesn't look so good on us. I think we've got enough to 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 at least finish second in that group, but probably top, I would say.
I would hope that we would top it. Yeah. But we've been wrong before, haven't we, with this
Yeah.
sort of thing? But then again, this isn't our first rodeo as a club. Now, there are still a core of players that have got a decent amount of Champions League experience with Spurs, and obviously
Mm,
we're buying cleverly, and we people like Perisic coming in, who have got that pedigree of being able to go and get results in European games.
Also, what do you reckon? Do you think club-wise, because we got to the final of the Champions League, that affects the club mentality with our approach to that? Because I know we've had quite a few sort of player changeovers since that final, um, but I suspect that the club sees itself as able to go far in that competition now.
Yeah, yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, it's an odd thing to sort of think back on it, hasn't it? Because all of a sudden, 3 years has passed. And actually, in my mind, it seems like an awfully long time ago, like a
Mm,
different era, really. But I mean that final appearance came after 4 consecutive years of appearing in the competition. It allows us to step up the mentality as a club to be able to feel like we belong there and
mm,
that we're not just visiting for a nice day out.
yeah.
I mean, I know you sort of think back to the year that we were there with Redknapp and Bale that year. It did all feel a little bit like I mean, it was a wonderful story for the most part, but we did I certainly felt a little bit like we were visiting.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a similar feeling. I don't know if you remember this. I'm sure you do. But in the final when we played Liverpool, the vibe was we're happy to be there. Liverpool are there to win it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a bit of that about it. Although I got to admit, I, I honestly expected us to beat them that day. I mean,
Yeah.
we can talk about the decision and what went afterwards and that, but I honestly thought, with my work and what I do away from sort of football, talking about football, um, I'm sort of quite heavily involved in narratives and telling stories and
Mm,
there seemed to be this kind of inevitable arc about it,
yeah.
that
Oh yeah,
the
Pochettino believed it, didn't he? He
yeah,
had everybody in the club believing this was our sort of destiny. Basically, it was he's a big sort of universal energy believer, isn't he? He just felt that this was inevitable. In fact, that the
yeah,
coach was made and and everything was all done for it, wasn't it? And
yeah,
but I do feel somewhat like maybe as a fan base that was the feeling that we're happy to be there, whereas Liverpool wanted to win it. And I think this time round, it will be totally different. There were
mm,
rumours, weren't there? That I think like when Kane saw the trophy and then picking that up, he was in tears. If that opportunity came around again, we would be there to win it and not just be at the party.
yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I completely agree. And you think about how the club has moved on in the years since as well. We've had a couple of bad years with terrible management and
Mm.
players underperforming and everything that we all know about. But But underneath all of that, the club has continued to develop, you know,
Mm, mhm.
and the other important thing I think that you know mustn't be overlooked at the moment as well is that I don't know about you, but I've sort of been talking to some of the people I go to games with, and the new stadium's beginning to feel like home now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Whereas before it didn't feel like home at all yet.
Mm. No, absolutely.
Um,
Even down to the fact that some people are booing at half time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that
Uh,
last match when people started booing that just that really, it wasn't many, but I can't get on board with that. But
No,
each of their
no,
own.
no. Yeah, well, unfortunately, you're always going to get an element of this, aren't you? You know, people expect some. Well, I've paid good money for this, and yeah, well,
Yeah, I can.
yeah,
So to some degree, I can get it. You can. I suppose you have, and you can do what you want, but I just don't think it's very helpful. That's all.
no, no,
It's not going to inspire the players. I don't think the only one that's going to do that is Conte. He can see what's going on.
yeah,
Talking about that, actually, did you see what Kulusevski said about Conte the other day?
no, no. Go on, tell me.
Like really, really positive stuff. That it was just saying basically, he apart from the fact that he's got everyone in the so tight together, but he said he's never ever in his whole life come across anyone whose if you like obsession is to win as it is with him. And he says, and he feels that this is being communicated to the players in no uncertain terms. And one of the commentators asks him, well, do you think you can win the Premier League? He says, look, talk is cheap. Basically, we're not going to say anything. We're just going to do what we can do and see how far it takes us. But
Mm.
he really wanted to sort of impress upon the fact that Conte's mentality is really seeming to sort of being quite infectious with everybody. It's win at all costs mentality. I think it's great.
There's another thing as well, you know, about that. I've noticed a real change in Conte. You know, in the spring when things were a bit rocky and there was a lot of uncertainty. I mean, even up to the last few weeks in the Champions League push, you know, there were sort of question marks about his commitment going forward. Will he extend his deal? Will he just, you know, do the minimum and then go? Is somebody going to come in for him and turn his head? And I don't know whether I'm just reading too much into it, but I see there's a real change in his demeanor at the moment. Is that he seems absolutely 100% involved in this now.
Mm, mm,
And you know, I wonder, is it, you know, has the club proved to him that they are backing him to you know, in the manner that he demands, and that actually that settled his nerves, and he feels that he can really invest in this properly now.
mm, mm. I 100% agree, Rich. I mean, everything about him now just seems much more settled. The questions aren't being asked at the moment
Mm.
about his future all the time. It's clear that we've invested in strengthening the way that he's wanted it. Um, so yeah, all signs look positive. I mean, I would not be surprised, and I think it would be the right thing. I think we've mentioned this in a previous pod, but for him to sign a new deal, I think the Kane one will come soon as well, and that will just settle everything down. I think we'll wait until all this business is out of the way, because I'm sure in the next week or so, which we'll get onto in a minute, actually,
Mm.
there's a lot of stuff to be done yet, and then when that's all tidied up, I think they'll sort the rest of the house business, and that will keep us set going forward. And I suspect he's happy because he must have not only been given reassurances, but he can see the commitment of the players who, as Ben Davies was saying, they'd run through brick walls for him, and that's all he can ask for.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed it, you know, him talking after the Wolves game quite effusively about Harry Kane as well, and about, you know,
Mm,
he obviously always knew that he was a good striker. He always knew that he was a talented player, but that he's been, you know, gobsmacked at his work and his application and how much
yeah.
he's dedicated to it and things like that. And, you know, all of those things coming out, they're really encouraging for it going forward, aren't they?
Absolutely. I think he's sort of almost hinting that in the sort of player that Harry Kane is, he's only seen in certain players that are just self-obsessed and really arrogant. And he said he's just not like that.
Yeah,
He's got all of those qualities and some in terms of like being a proper squad player
yeah.
and leader in that sense.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was watching. I think it's a couple of years old now, but Gary Neville doing an extended interview with Dimitar Berbatov last